Hey, gorgeous. Welcome to the Ready to Bloom podcast, which features interviews with inspiring women entrepreneurs from around the world. Thank you so much for joining us today. Now, without further ado, I'll hand you over to your host, Holly Wharton.
Hello and welcome to the Ready to Bloom podcast, episode 125. This is your host, Holly Wharton. I'm here with today's special guest, Kat Loterzo. Kat is a successful author, speaker, and mentor to revolutionary leaders who want it all on their terms now, if not sooner. Welcome, Kat.
Hey, Holly. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
I'm really excited to speak with you today because I absolutely love what you do. I've been following you online for the last, 2 or 3 years, ever since you were doing, the fitness focus. And I love your massive content creation, and I'm very excited to have you on the show.
Oh, well, thank you so much for saying that. And thank you for sharing that you've been following me for a few years. It's always cool to hear, that someone's been around since the fitness biz days. So yeah. I'm excited to have a chat and share some stuff that inspires people, hopefully.
Great. So why don't you start out by telling us a little bit about your background and your business journey and how you got to where you are today? Because you've had that really big shift in your business a couple of years ago.
Yeah, sure. For sure. I'll try and keep it not too long. It's kind of like, oh my God, it's a big story, which is true for everyone. So for me, I think the thing that underpins it all in terms of where I've ended up, where I am now, is that I've always, for as long as I can remember, believed in the concept of more, the idea that the normal life is like normal and not the only option. I don't know if you ever saw the film with Ewan McGregor, A Life Less Ordinary. It was from like 20 years ago. And I just really remember, I liked the film, but I remember resonating with the title. I was like, yes, that's what I want, a life less ordinary. And so I sort of grew up reading like all the personal development books from my dad's bookshelf from a really young age, like Tony Robbins and Brian Tracy and that sort of thing. So I guess maybe that stuff planted some seeds in me, but I also think that, entrepreneurialism and rebelliousness and all that stuff is sort of in your DNA to an extent. So as much as I was like, I was a really good student academically, I was like a good girl. I followed the rules. I was sort of a school nerd and, very shy and very awkward and like always wearing the wrong clothes and eating the wrong food and sort of that kid in school, but good academically. And I guess I was kind of on a pathway of normal success. And even as I came towards the end of my schooling, my teachers, like multiple of my teachers wrote on my end of school reports, I've never met a student more suited to tertiary studies. And so I was all set to become a lawyer and kind of follow the normal success pathway. But I went along to college, and it just, I don't know, it was like the rebelliousness set in all these years of being the top A+ student and kind of always looking for approval from my teachers and my parents and other adults. And all of a sudden, I think it hit me that nobody was actually going to force me to follow the rules anymore now that I was out of high school and into college. And so I just stopped. I just stopped following all the rules, like all of them. And I kind of went off on a little party, whatever, little tangent, nothing too wild, but pretty wild for me considering who I'd been, growing up. But meanwhile, I just kind of floated around in terms of what I was going to do with my life, and when you're like 18, 19, 20, it's like, that's what everybody wants to know. What are you going to do with your life? And it's this massive responsibility and pressure to decide. And I couldn't, and I kind of hopped from one sort of degree pathway to another, but never really investing my actual time or emotion into it. It was like I just didn't care. And at the time I felt like I was being irresponsible, and my parents definitely felt I was being irresponsible. But there was also something within me that just felt like, nah, I just don't buy it. I just don't really think that I have to do this. If you had have asked me at the time, I would have been completely unable to justify that. And I would have felt like I was just making excuses as well. But it was just almost like a truth that I felt in my heart. Like, it wasn't that I couldn't see the value in higher education or following, career pathway. It was more that I just felt like, nah, I just don't believe it. I just don't really think this is necessary. I had no idea what I would do instead. And so what I ended up doing was just abandoning college. I went to Europe for a few months by myself. I gained a bit of weight in that time. And as a result of that, I came back and became kind of fixated with going to the gym and getting in shape. And that actually led me into a pathway of becoming a personal trainer. which I ended up doing for nearly 15 years.
Wow.
So it was like completely different to the lawyer pathway and completely different actually to who I was as a person growing up, which was this geeky, introverted, very uncool kid. So I kind of reinvented myself as the like dyed my hair blonde and was like this really fit fitness model, perky, outgoing personal trainer. And it was kind of like this persona. And I look back at it now and I go, oh my God, I spent 15 years as a personal trainer as a fuck you to the cool girls that I grew up with at school. Like that's where that pathway came from. I totally see that now because it was like, I'm going to be cooler than everybody. Now, having said that, I'm passionate about fitness to this day. So it wasn't like it was just about that. But, you know, it was freedom. And I made a lot of money as a personal trainer. I've always been really good at selling. I was kind of like that kid selling stuff door to door, like stealing lemons and oranges off my grandparents' tree and selling them as a 5-year-old. And I was an Avon lady at 11 and I was making a lot of money with Nutrimetics at 16. So I was always hustling. So I made a lot of money as a personal trainer. And I actually went into a management pathway, which just made me basically like fat and miserable, and was, you know, a time in my life where I was actually married in my mid-20s, and it was not the right marriage, and it was kind of like my whole life was on this pathway where from the outside looking in, I was living the dream. I had this supposedly great husband, and not that there was anything bad about him, just to be clear, it was just not the right marriage. And, you know, supposedly great career and making great money and had like this great apartment and BMW and I was only 25 and all this stuff. And I look at it now, I look at it as, oh, I was living the dream, but it was somebody else's dream. And I think that there was still that part of me deep within, well, obviously that's felt like, but, you know, what about this life less ordinary? Is this all there is? And my husband started sort of making noises about having a kid. And I was just like, oh my God, I felt like I was on a train with the brakes cut hurtling towards the edge of a cliff. I really felt panic and fear. And it was just like, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. I cannot become like a soccer mom or something and live in the suburbs with my job where I'm getting like fatter and less happy year by year, basically. Whether or not I'm making money. And so I sort of had like a quarter life meltdown. I call it my quarter life crisis. I left my marriage in a really messy and just not a great way. And I quit the job and I like literally walked away from my whole life. I just left my savings and the car and the apartment and like all my possessions. And I just took like one plate and fork and knife and the cat and just left. And it was to go to nothing though. Like I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life still. I just knew that this was not right. And it's a bit of a pattern I have when things are not working in my life. I tend to just completely destroy them rather than try and find the next step before leaving the previous step. You know, I don't normally mean in a destructive way, but the whole like leaving a marriage and a job and money, it was pretty destructive at the time, you know, but I felt like I didn't know how to get out of it. And so I spent a few years pretty lost, really, in my mid to late 20s and pretty depressed, very insomniac, like full-blown insomnia and binge eating and bulimia and too much drinking. And it got to a point where I was buying red wine by the cask on my way home from work. And during the day, I was still this like perky, successful personal trainer chick. And I looked amazing and I was bouncing around town, but I was just kind of a broken mess, to be honest, and just felt like I honestly felt like it's all over and, you know, nobody's ever going to love me and I'm never going to make anything of myself. But, you know, at some point I started blogging because I've always enjoyed writing. I did really well at school in English and I loved to write, and I actually pursued professional writing and editing for a short period of time amongst all my different college stints. And so I started blogging for my personal training clients, and that was in 2007, and it kind of took off, and I realized I really did enjoy this writing thing, and I started getting a steady stream of personal training clients as a result of the blogging, and the clients, though, were starting to come from all around Australia and even beyond, and so they couldn't all come and see me in person, and so I did like a kind of like a tour of Australia, like female fat loss days all around the country, and then I responded to things that people were asking me for in my community at the time. This would have been like 2009 or 10, and I made an eating plan. It was like an information product I called the Look Great Naked Eating Plan. And I thought I might sell 10 or 20 copies of this. And it sold like 200 straight away the day, or within 2 days of me launching it, which was about $5,000 at the time. And I mean, I'm sort of fast tracking the story here. That was like 2011. I'd been blogging and doing various things online since 2007. But basically what happened is I sort of accidentally built this really successful online fitness business between 2007 and 2012. I didn't make any money the first few years online. I wasn't trying to make money online. I wasn't even really particularly aware of that. I thought that if I built a successful blog, that it would increase my personal training, brand in person. Like I thought maybe I could get some gigs with some companies, that sort of thing, like an in-house trainer. And all that stuff did happen. But the whole information product side of things kind of was opened up to me. And I'm an avid learner, so I was sort of researching and learning things and followed that pathway. And the short version is that by the end of 2012, I was making over $30,000 a month online, selling fitness and fat loss information products. And my business was called, and the website's still there. It's like, I can't bear to bring it down. It's called womanincredible.com. And it was fat loss, nutrition, and motivation for driven women. And I didn't have a single product that was over $99 in price, but yet I was seriously like raking it in basically. And I was just loving it and loving the community. And it was funny because I didn't know anything about internet marketing, like all the stuff I know now. Like I never heard of all that stuff. The whole way that the female entrepreneur thing and entrepreneurialism in general is now online, it just didn't exist back then. Or if it did, I wasn't aware of it. So it was all totally like authentic tribe building, just kind of making friends with people and connecting with people and really just sharing stuff I was passionate about. And then if I would sell something, it would literally just be a response to me asking people on Facebook or in my community via email, well, what do you guys want? How can I help you? And then I would be like, okay, I'll make what you asked for and I'll put a cheap price on it. And then kind of everybody would just buy it every time. So it was all really organic and really cool. And I thought, I should get serious about this. I should learn how to go to the next level, right? So I hired a bunch of different coaches and I hustled my butt off and worked really hard to kind of reinvent myself as a serious online business person in 2013 and basically broke my whole business and just moved way out of alignment. Just honestly, to be perfectly frank, just started chasing money and doing stuff that various mentors were teaching me to do that worked from a sales perspective, but was just completely soul destroying for me. And so that thing I mentioned before where when something's not working for me, I just tend to destroy it rather than try and solve it. So that's pretty much what I did. I just kind of walked away from my whole business. I just recognized that if I didn't do something drastic, I would be stuck chasing the dollar for the rest of my life because it's such a trap. So I deliberately stopped selling stuff and stopped the money flow basically. And as a result of that, I ended up nearly going bankrupt. I ended up over $100,000 in debt and it was very scary and stressful and confronting time. And then from there, I just like put my head down in my journal and I just went back to everything I've always believed in about life on your terms, about having a purpose and a calling. I've always believed we're here for a reason. I grew up and I am Christian, and I really believe in the concept of purpose and destiny, and that each of us have certain gifts that we're born to share with the world, and that if we don't share those gifts, then essentially nothing really works. And one of the most powerful lines I ever heard around this was actually in church. It was like a personal development service almost. And the line was, you can never create wealth from a place of the wrong service. And that just spoke to me so much because it kind of encapsulated everything I grew up believing from the various things that I took from church, but a lot of it from like the Tony Robbins books and that sort of thing, which was just that you're here for a reason. You've got particular gifts and callings to share with the world. You can have it all. Like you can have the money and the business and the lifestyle and the body and whatever else it is that you want, but it's not going to happen if you're out of alignment. And so my quest was to find a way back into alignment. And it took me, like a solid 6 months where I was honestly journaling 2 or 3 hours a day and reading everything I could get my hands on around money mindset and abundance and like limiting beliefs. And I would just walk up and down the coast where I was living at the time and like I had my second child at the time who was a baby, so I'd be like walking him in his stroller up and down for hours and listening to like Bob Proctor audios and anything along those lines. And I essentially just immersed myself into resetting my beliefs, resetting my mindset, ridding myself of fear and scarcity, and really just seeking to get into alignment. It was almost like I put myself through like a 6-month meditation camp or something whilst living my normal life, but not making money. And it was at the point where like sometimes I'd try and buy like $30 worth of groceries and it wouldn't go through, and it was pretty full on. And basically what happened is eventually the tide turned, and when it did, it happened very quickly. And I think what happened was I'd been doing all this immersive work to change myself from the inside out, and then I reached kind of like a breaking point internally where it was just like, that's it, I'm done. And I actually cried out to God, and I said something like, well, if I'm going to go down, or no, I think I asked something like, how much worse is this going to get? Because I don't know if I can handle it. And I felt, and I'm not like somebody who would say I feel like messages from God or that I talk to God or anything, or well, I talk to God, I don't usually hear an answer. I felt like I heard an audible voice saying, oh, it's going to get a lot worse.
Oh, no.
And I remember literally I was on a walk with my son in his stroller, and I remember throwing my hands up in the air and going, well, fucking bring it on then. If I'm going to go down, then I'll just go all the way down as fast as possible so that I can bounce back up. And I had this vision in my head, and I share this analogy all the time with my clients, like going down a roller coaster. I just had this vision like you're going down a roller coaster, Kat, and you're holding on to the edges. And if you keep holding on and trying to stop yourself getting to the bottom, well, you're still going to go to the bottom because of gravity, but you'll have no momentum to get back up again. And you'll be stuck at the bottom of the curve. And I just felt like, that's it. I have to let go. I have to surrender to what's going on. I have to surrender to if I go bankrupt, if I have to move into my parents' house with my kids, so be it. So I just surrendered. And honestly, as soon as I did submit, within 4 weeks, I'd made 40 grand extra. Within 6 months, I was making 50 grand a month. Within 8 months, I was making 80 grand a month. And within about 10 months, I was making over 100 grand a month. And it was just unbelievable. And I still look back on it, even now as I talk about it, and go, oh my God, what happened? And that was probably nearly 2 years ago now, and it's just I've just continued to build my business and create my dream life. And I mean, I have my ups and downs, obviously, but it was such a powerful learning time for me to just be absolutely true to what you're called to do in the world.
That is a fantastic story, and I think that's so inspiring to so many people who might be listening to this and in that struggling phase of their business where they're holding on for dear life and struggling against all the stuff that's coming up for them. So, Kat, what are your top tips on how the women who are listening to us can be true to themselves, be committed to what's in their heart, and how they can have what they want, what their dream is?
Yeah, I think firstly, I'll share the number one thing that works for me, and this is, I pretty much preach this to the heavens and down to everybody who wants to ask me anything, which is to journal. I think this is just like a free resource that we all have at our disposal that is seriously powerful. If you don't have a journaling habit, I know that it's easy to go, what even is that? What does that actually do? Really? Like, is that your success tip? Seriously, like, you figure your shit out with your journaling. I consider it essential. I have journaled pretty much every morning for as long as I can remember. I have boxes of leather-bound journals. And it's just the way that you tap back into you. That's what it's actually about, because the reality is we're all so busy. We have so many demands, and we're constantly adding more demands onto our own lists. And, if you want to make money online, you want to build a business, then of course it's normal to go and learn and to maybe purchase courses and see what others are doing and try and educate yourself. The problem with that is it can be the blind leading the blind, but that's not really the issue, because, generally, most people who are talking success have created success, but who's to say that success is going to work for you, right? Now, the other big problem is that most online stuff to do with how to succeed in business is to do with strategy. And strategy is really important, but it's the icing on top of the cake, right? It's the cherry on top. It's not the foundation. so few people take the trouble to get the foundation right. And the foundation is, who are you actually? What is it that you stand for? What do you believe in? The question I love to ask is, what is the message you want to shake the world with? And if you're not tapped into that and connecting with it daily, you can't just like write it down and then, jump into running around like a headless chicken trying to get shit done. If you're not connecting daily to your message, to your core, I guess you could call it, to what it is that brings you alive, then what you're putting out there in your business is probably just going to be a reflection of all the stuff that you're looking at outside of yourself, which means you don't stand out, you're not that interesting, nobody cares, and they don't buy stuff. I mean, that's the brutal, outcome of what happens when people don't share their true gifts. And putting money aside, like there's nothing that breaks my heart more than feeling or seeing or hearing from somebody who clearly has so much power within them. Like, you speak to people in a private way on the phone and they share what it is that they really feel matters and that they want to impress upon the world. But then you look at their stuff online and it's like, what the hell is this? It's just the same shit that everybody else is doing. And that's heartbreaking, because that's like being given a gift, being born with a gift, and then not sharing it. So in order to be able to do your true work in the world and commit absolutely to creating the business and the life that you actually want, there's lots of things that you can do, but journaling is a tool that I just cannot recommend highly enough, because it does connect you back to all that stuff. It helps you figure things out. It's kind of, I think of it like an emotional detoxification. And, another way to look at it is, before you jump into this busy day of reacting, you just want to take that time to set your internal compass and to basically get into alignment again. It has to be done daily, and say, right, just as a reminder to yourself, this is where I'm heading, right? This is my focus. This is what matters to me. This is what it's actually about. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing. This is what I believe. This is what I stand for, whatever it is. I'm not saying you've got to journal about all this stuff every single morning. And then you go forth and you do the practical work that you need to do, but you're doing it from a place of alignment. And beyond that, like, you're building confidence, you're building self-belief, you're essentially, motivating and keeping yourself accountable. So as far as what it takes, of course it takes hustle, of course it takes grind, it does take learning about strategy, it certainly takes discipline and, habit development and taking massive amounts of action. But the thing is that all of those things are a direct outcome of your mindset. And so the most important thing that we can each do, internal work. It can be a pretty short period of your day, but it has to be done daily. It's essential. I just feel like it's so obvious that I don't understand why people downplay it, or, if they haven't fully experienced, they just feel like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, it's at work, or I'll journal or something, and it's like, seriously, what you do is a direct product of who you are. So if you want to change your outcomes, your practical, your tangible results in a given area of your life, then you need to look at who you are as a person. Fitness is a good example to use here. It's kind of like, if somebody wants to get in shape, I guess they understand, exercise and eat better. But then when they get there, they're not then going, okay, cool, now I can just go to the gym once a month, or eat a salad on a Sunday or something, or even in the first place do that. But yet people treat internal work that way. They feel like it's something to do if they've got extra time, or if they're bored, or if they go to a seminar. And it's like, no, everything starts from within. If you're not where you want to be with income, with impact, with even if you can't figure out why you can't stop procrastinating, why you're so undisciplined, whatever it might be. I know I have areas in my life where I'm like, seriously, dude, I know what to do. I know how to do it. I have time to do it. I mean, I can make time. I'm just not doing it. And you got to look at that and go, well, this is not a problem to do with strategy. This is something going on internally, right? So everything that we need to do to succeed in business reflects who we are as a person.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's fantastic advice. So, Kat, you've got so many different offerings out there. How can the women who are listening to this work with you or learn more from you?
Yeah, the best place to start is to obviously come to my website, and I mean, you can read thousands of blogs there if you're so inclined, or at least see the at least see the latest ones. So that's at katloterzo.com. It's KATLOTERZO. I'm literally updating the website right now, but there's definitely always a free gift available on the website if you want to join my community of revolutionary leaders who are out there taking the world by storm on their terms. And so at the moment, I have one of my Amazon best-selling books, which is called Multi-Passionate Entrepreneur. And it's essentially all about how your niche is you, and to share your true gifts with the world and kind of reflecting everything we just spoke about. So yeah, come join the community at katloterzo.com. Come say hi on Facebook. If you want to read more of my stuff, you can go to booksforkickasswomen.com, and that's where all my Amazon books are. So that's a good way to get into my content, which is super low cost. And then if you did want to do any work with me, the best place to begin, I mean, I have so many different options, but the best place to begin and really where the hub is and the community is in my tribe. So that's at katloterzo.com/the tribe.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me and for dealing with the fact that you asked me a question and it takes me 20 minutes to answer it.
No, I love it. Your story is one of the most important parts of this podcast because other women will listen to what you've been through, the ups and the downs and the roller coaster and just the surrender. And I think that's so, so valuable to hear other women's stories and how they've built their business. So thank you. Fantastic story. And thank you for sharing it.
Cool. Thank you again for having me.
You're welcome. And thank you for listening. And remember to visit readytobloom.com/125 for the show notes on this episode. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Ready to Bloom podcast with your host, Holly Wharton. You can find more information about today's guests, including links for topics that were discussed at readytobloom.com. That's bloom.com. And if you enjoyed this episode, please remember to head over to iTunes and leave us a quick review of this podcast. Thank you so much.